True mentorship is more than just sharing advice. It's about converting the friction of your life into a frictionless path for somebody else. It means taking the mistakes that slowed you down, the decisions that cost you years, the pain that nearly broke you, and the lessons you had to learn the hardest possible way, and turn them around into a map that somebody else can follow. Today, we're breaking down how to leverage your toughest lessons to create a scalable framework for success. Because surviving something does not automatically make you a mentor. Pain alone does not make you wise. Time alone does not make you qualified to lead. You become qualified when you can examine what happened, identify what went wrong, understand what helped you recover, and then communicate those lessons in a way that helps another person make better decisions. That is when survival becomes strategy. That is when pain becomes purpose. That is when compassion becomes kinetic. It's time to turn your survival into a leadership legacy. Welcome to the Conviction Fiction, where we challenge the stories that help keep people from becoming imprisoned again, and also how to deal long after the physical gates have opened. I'm your host, Antoine Rivers, and today we're talking about kinetic compassion, the kind of compassion that does not just feel sorry for people, pray for people, and encourage people, or even tell people that everything is going to be okay. Kinetic compassion moves, it intervenes, teaches, corrects, it creates access, it removes unnecessary obstacles, it turns personal redemption into a system that helps other people win. Let's get into it. Many of us were taught to hide our scars. We learned to cover our failures, avoid conversations about our mistakes, and present a cleaned up version of ourselves to the world. We thought leadership required perfection. We thought credibility meant never letting people see where we struggle. But what if the exact opposite is true? What if some of the most valuable leadership resources you possess are hidden inside the experiences you are most ashamed to discuss? Your past failures are not merely embarrassing moments. They're not merely embarrassing memories. When they are properly examined, they become high value intellectual property. Now, just think about intellectual property for a moment. To define it simply, it is knowledge, a process, a system, a design, or a method that has value because it can solve a problem. Your life contains intellectual property. The question is whether you have taken the time to extract it. The argument you wish you had handled differently contains a lesson about emotional regulation. If you think about it, there are so many opportunities that may have been lost because you were unprepared, but they also contain lessons about discipline. The prison sentence, addiction, termination, divorce, public failure, a business collapse, or family conflict may contain lessons that could prevent another person from making the same mistakes. But those lessons remain buried until you are willing to examine them honestly. Now, a scar. Most of us have scars if we play sports. Or guys, the girls, ladies out there, we sometimes have scars, maybe from a surgery, maybe from an accident. We got cut ourselves or something, maybe a bullet wound. But a scar is basically evidence that a wound occurred, but it also contains evidence that healing took place. That scar can tell a story. It can reveal what caused the injury, how long recovery took, what treatment worked, what made the condition worse, and what someone else can do to avoid the same damage. That is why raw experience carries so much authority. People today are surrounded by information. They can watch tutorials on YouTube, read articles online, take courses online, ask AI for advice, or search for answers within seconds. Information is everywhere, but information without embodiment often lacks credibility. People are not only asking, do you know the theory? They are asking, have you lived through anything that proves this theory works? They want to know whether you have made difficult decisions when the consequences were real. Academic leadership theory can explain conflict resolution, but lived experience can explain what it feels like to control your emotions when disrespect threatens to pull you back into an old identity. Even a textbook can explain resilience, but lived experience can explain how to keep moving when your reputation has collapsed, your options are limited, or the people around you expect you to fail. Lived experience can demonstrate what it means to look in the mirror and admit that your choices help create the situation you're trying to escape. That does not mean education is unimportant. It means theory becomes more powerful when it is combined with tested experience. There's also an important distinction between surviving a crisis and extracting the repeatable mechanics of that survival. We're going to get into that because some people survive and never study how they survive. They say, well, I made it through, but they cannot explain what changed or what happened. They cannot see the habits, the relationships, the boundaries, or the decisions that help move them forward. They survived the event, but they did not extract the blueprint. For mentorship to become effective, you have to go deeper. You have to ask what nearly destroyed me. Questions like what habits did I have to abandon? The warning signs that I can now recognize earlier than I used to. That is where the real value is found. The value is not only in saying I went through something. The value is in saying, here are the mechanics of what happened. Here's the pattern that I failed to recognize. And here's how you can respond differently. That is survival converted into leadership. Now, one of the hardest parts of examining your past is separating the emotion from the lesson. The emotion from the lesson. When you have experienced trauma, incarceration, betrayal, or abandonment, addiction, your memories are often attached to powerful emotions. You may feel anger, you may feel guilt, shame, you may feel grief over the time that was lost. Those emotions are real and they should not be dismissed. But when you are trying to turn pain into a blueprint, you have to learn how to examine the event without allowing the emotion to control the way you look at things. This is not about becoming cold or pretending that the pain did not matter. It's about creating enough distance to understand the logic of the mistake. For example, instead of saying that person betrayed me, you might want to ask yourself, well, what warning signs did you ignore? Or what boundaries did you fail to establish with this person, right? That's how you find the blueprint. That's what you would have to do in order to, it may be uncomfortable because it removes the comfort of a one-sided story. Yeah, they betrayed you, but what led to it? And mentorship requires honesty. That you cannot teach someone how to avoid a trap if you refuse to explain how you stepped into the trap, right? You cannot provide a clear map without giving the whole view of the road. One framework I encourage people to use is, recognize the event, learn the emotion, correct the error, educate yourself, and then execute to the next level. First, you got to identify the event. What actually happened? You got to remove the exaggeration, the defensiveness, just state the facts. Then you want to identify the emotion. What were you feeling at the time? Were you angry, afraid, insecure, embarrassed? And then identify the error. What decision, assumption, habit, or belief contributed to this negative outcome? And once you do that, you can finally extract the education. Like, what did the experience teach you? What principle can be applied to other situations? And then finally, you want to execute. What should you or someone else do differently the next time? That last step is what turns recovery into a standard operating procedure. Now, everybody know about an SOP, right? It's not based on how you feel on a particular day. It's a predetermined process. Businesses use it to create consistency. Hospitals use it to help protect patients. Jails use it to deal with riots and escapes from prison. Pilots use checklists to reduce preventable mistakes. Mentors should also help people create personal standard operating procedures for their lives. For example, personally, when I feel disrespected, I try not to respond immediately, right? I don't want to respond immediately because at the core of disrespect, it's a feeling of pride, right? Or it's not recognizing that I'm valued, right? So I try not to respond immediately because I know pride is pretty much in the way right now. Pride is an emotion. When I receive unexpected money, most times I don't spend it, never do I spend it for at least 24 hours because that's that instant gratification, right? You know, I'm go run and do something with this money that I pretty much got my bills taken care of. Let me go spend this blessing, right? But that's an emotion. That's that rush of some instant gratification at that moment. When I'm offered an opportunity, I always look at the long-term cost instead of only the immediate reward. I try to do those things because those are personal operating procedures for me. They remove some of the decision-making pressure from high emotion moments. When you get some money that's unexpected, you kind of feel good, like you deserve it. When someone disrespects you, you kind of feel threatened. You may feel anger. And when conflict becomes emotional, you have to pause the conversation before it becomes destructive, right? Many of our worst decisions happen because we waited until the crisis to decide what kind of person we're going to be. But in the middle of a crisis, your judgment may already be compromised. That is why standards must be created before the pressure arrives. I mean, take a moment and think about the specific turning points in your history where just one better decision could have changed everything. Maybe it was answering a phone call. Maybe it was getting into a car or not getting into a car or carrying a weapon or choosing pride over peace, refusing to ask for help. One decision may not have created your entire situation, but one different decision could have changed its direction. Those turning points are mentorship gold, not because you should spend your life replaying what you regret, but because someone younger may be standing at the same intersection right now. They may not recognize it as a turning point. To them, it may feel like a normal Friday night or a harmless relationship or just a night out with the fellas. But you know how quickly a small decision can become a life-altering consequence. Your role is not to control them. Your role is to help them see farther away than they can currently see. That is proactive mentorship. Now, one of the biggest weaknesses in traditional mentorship is vagueness. Mentors often tell people, oh man, you just got to stay focused, make good choices, work hard. What's the other one? Believe in yourself. Don't make the same mistakes I made. Now, those statements may be sincere, but they are not always useful. What does stay focused mean when a young person is being pressured by friends? What exactly does stay focused mean? What does make good choices mean when every available option seems difficult? What does it mean to make good choices when every option seems like the wrong choice? What does work hard mean when someone does not know what skills to develop or don't even have a job? What does believing yourself mean when repeated rejection has damaged their confidence? And that's where I wanted to talk to you about changing that mode of thinking as a mentor, because wisdom has to become specific. A strong mentor provides if and then scenarios, right? If a friend asks you to participate in something you would not explain openly to, like your mama or your wife or your husband, then pause before agreeing to it. Then pause. If and then. If someone presses you to make a major decision immediately, then assume that urgency may be working against your best interest. They want it more than you. If an opportunity requires secrecy or for you to be dishonest, then the opportunity is probably more expensive than it appears. If and then. One last one. If you find yourself repeatedly explaining away someone's behavior, then stop listening to your explanations and start studying the pattern. That is operational wisdom. That gives people a decision-making tool they can use in real time. If then. Mentors also need a translation layer. Your past experience may have happened in a different time, a different environment, or under different technology. The specific circumstances may have changed, but you got to remember the underlying human patterns remain. In the past, peer pressure may have happened on the street corner or on the basketball court or on the block. Today, it can happen in a group chat. Back in the day, conflict may have remained between just, a few people in your neighborhood or whatnot. Today, it can be recorded, posted, shared, and permanently attached to someone's digital identity. So you'll make new enemies just by someone seeing something that you recorded years ago, right? In the past, financial scams, right? They may require face-to-face contact. You go into a bank or you passing a bag check. Today, they can arrive through direct messages, fake investment schemes, crypto platforms, online relationships, or promises of instant income. In the past, a person could leave a mistake behind geographically. Just get up and go. Today, screenshots follow you, right? Videos come back up, right? Now, a mentor cannot simply say, back in my day, that's how you get OG Unk status. Back in the day, you have to understand the modern environment well enough to translate the principle. The lesson may still be about ego. It may be about belonging, impulsiveness, fear, greed, insecurity, or the desire for validation, but the delivery system, now that has changed. Your mentorship has to account for that. That means listening to younger people without immediately dismissing their challenges. You may not understand every platform that they use. You may not relate to every cultural trend, but you can understand the emotional forces underneath them. The need to belong is not new. The desire to be respected is not new. The temptation of quick money, you think that just came out? There's nothing new under the sun. The fear of rejection is not new. The pressure to perform, act like you somebody that you ain't for others, that's not new. The technology is different, but the human vulnerability, that's still the same. Once you identify the underlying principle, you can make your experience relevant. You should also create a system for documenting your lessons. Don't rely on your memory alone. Write down the patterns you have observed. You can document your mistakes, the warning signs that you saw, the consequences, the correction, the principles. Document the action steps. And you can organize these lessons into different categories, because when it comes to decision making, that's a whole chapter. Conflict resolution, relationships, finances, employment, leadership. Turn those lessons into discussions, workshops, videos, worksheets, courses, whatever you want to, books or mentoring guides, because your story becomes more scalable when it can be taught consistently. While we're talking about books, go head over to the convictionfictionpodcast.com, pick up No Turning Back, No Going Back, or Turning Forward, which can help you on your reentry journey, whether you're, coming out of incarceration, where you've been released for a few years Even if you just had setbacks in life, whether it's been hospitalization or leaving a halfway house or leaving recovery, or you battle with addiction, all of these things are addressed in the book because they are mental jails that we pretty much are being released from, right? Your story becomes more scalable when it can be taught. There's nothing wrong with telling stories because stories create connection, but a story without an extracted lesson may inspire someone for a moment and then leave them without a plan. Now, your curriculum is going to create repetition, creates consistency. Curriculum gives people something to review after the emotional moment has passed. And last shameless plug, the Conviction Fiction podcast is moving into the e-learning space. Look for in the next few months, I've been working on this project for the last, I want to say almost a year and a half, but it's almost to fruition, wherein I'm going to offer courses, workbooks, classes in real time that you can take at your own pace when it comes to dealing with some of the conundrums or some of the problems or obstacles dealing with reentry. You can buy them individually, but more so I'm focused on the reentry spaces, the reentry centers, some of the halfway houses, to make that a part of their curriculum so that we can reach more people by giving them the tools or the resources necessary for them to dig within themselves and have confidence that they can make this reentry journey successful. The goal is not just to make people say that was powerful. The goal is to help them say, I know what I need to do next in order to prevent recidivism, etc. Now, we talked about kinetic mentorship. What does kinetic mean, right? Kinetic is movement, right? Kinetic mentorship is active guidance that turns wisdom into movement. A kinetic mentor does not stand on the sidelines offering occasional motivational statements. That mentor will help a person identify direction, recognize danger, develop skills, and measure progress to make those necessary adjustments. The mentor should be more like a navigator, right? Because we know that a navigator does not drive the vehicle for you. A navigator kind of studies the route, recognize upcoming turns. They may warn you about construction that's coming up or help you reroute you when the original plan becomes blocked. Your history gives you the ability to predict certain obstacles. You have already seen how pride can distort judgment. You've seen how desperation makes bad opportunities look attractive. You've seen all of this stuff. You've seen how one undisciplined season can delay progress for years. But the person you mentor must understand why they should trust your navigation, right? Because the pattern recognition is one of the greatest gifts a mentor can offer. That's why we have to have radical transparency, because that person must understand why they should trust you, right? Now, radical transparency doesn't mean, let me disclaimer, it does not mean sharing every personal detail with everyone. It doesn't mean that. It means refusing to create a false image of perfection, right? I see it too often. It means being honest about your own redemption. You can say, I can understand why that choice is tempting because I made a similar choice. I know what it feels like to want immediate respect. These are statements that you can use to help your mentor understand that you connect with them. For instance, I use this one. I'm not warning you because I think I'm better than you. I'm warning you because I recognize the road. That level of honesty builds trust. People are often more willing to receive correction when they know the person correcting them understands the struggle. Okay. But transparency must serve the person being mentored. It shouldn't become a performance. Your story should not dominate every conversation. The goal is to make the mentee admire how far you've come. The goal is to help them understand how far they can go, right? It's not about them giving you admiration. It's about helping them understand how far they can go. And this kinetic mentorship also requires real-time feedback loops, right? You need to ask, what did you try? What happened? What worked? what didn't work. A mentor may say, here's what I recommend. The mentor, the mentee go out and try it. They return with results. Together, you guys can examine the outcome and then you refine the approach. That is what a feedback loop is. It prevents the mentor from becoming disconnected from the mentee's reality. It also prevents advice from becoming rigid. Sometimes your guidance will need to change because the person is different from you. Their gifts are different, the environment is different, but the principle may remain the same. But the strategy may need adjustment, right? A successful mentor does not want the mentee calling for permission before every decision. You don't want to create a desire for dependence, right? The mentor teaches the person how to think. You're helping them build internal navigation. And at first, you may need to walk with them pretty closely, but over time, they should become more capable of identifying patterns, seeing or evaluating the consequences, regulating their own emotions, and making responsible decisions without constant supervision. The goal is not control. The goal is capacity. Now, most times we often measure leadership by personal achievement. How much did you earn last year? What title did you obtain? How many followers you got? How many books you sold? How many rewards did you receive or recognitions? How large is your platform? We hear them all the time. Those achievements may matter, but mentorship requires a different measurement. Your impact should also be measured by the people who became stronger because you were present. How many people avoided a mistake because you told the truth? How many people avoided a mistake because you told the truth? How many people developed confidence because you gave them responsibility? Right? How many people became better parents, leaders, employers, entrepreneurs, coaches because you invested in them? And the most challenging measurement of all, I think, is how quickly did your mentees surpass your milestones? How fast did they pass you? Some mentors become uncomfortable when the person they taught begins to excel, right? I mean, the student being the master, right? They enjoy being needed. Those mentors enjoy being the expert. But true mentorship celebrates succession. A great coach doesn't become jealous when the athlete breaks the coach's record, right? A great parent should not resent a child for reaching opportunities that parent never had. Your ceiling should become somebody else's floor. Your years of struggle should reduce their learning curve, right? And that is the frictionless path, right? They should not need 15 years to learn what you can teach them in 15 minutes, provided they are willing to listen and apply it. Not a life without adversity. We're just talking about a frictionless path, not a guarantee that they will never fail, but we're saying a frictionless path, a path where unnecessary suffering is reduced because wisdom arrived before the consequences. Legacy is not simply what people remember about you after you've gone. Legacy is what continues to function because you were here. That is why you must teach your proteges how to operationalize their own lessons. Ask them, like, what did this experience teach you? What process helped you recover? What warning signs will you notice earlier this time? Right? You're not only mentoring a person, you are teaching them how to become a mentor. That creates multiplication. One lesson becomes two becomes four becomes, you get the picture here. The wisdom moves beyond your direct reach. That is how culture changes. That's how the narrative changes. That's how family cycles change. You may help one young man learn emotional discipline. He will then become a father, a better husband. His children grow up in a more stable home. They enter school with greater confidence. They make healthier decisions, and they mentor their friends. The impact expands far beyond the original conversation. It's a ripple effect. Go back and listen to the podcast episode. I forgot what season that was. I have to look back, but I'll tie it into this one. The ripple effect. The impact expands far beyond what really happened in the beginning. You may help one returning citizen, one person, understand professional communication. That person then goes and get employment, builds some financial stability, supports a household, and then later helps someone else navigate the same transition. Maybe you help a young woman recognize the difference between attention and genuine support, right? Now she's establishing stronger boundaries. She's avoiding destructive relationships, completes her education, and then teaches others how to value themselves. That is kinetic compassion. That is kinetic leadership. Compassion in motion, wisdom in motion, leadership in motion. At some point, you must transition from being the hero of your own story to becoming the architect of someone else's victory. Many of us spend years trying to prove that we overcame. I want people to see the distance between who I was and who I am. That's understandable. I did that for a long time, but eventually my story had to become larger than my personal redemption. I had to ask myself, who is going to benefit from what I learned, or who can move faster because I'm willing to be honest? Who can build something greater because I gave them the blueprint instead of making them start from nothing? The highest level of leadership is not standing in the spotlight. It is building people who no longer need your light to find their way. Now, before I close today, I want to give you a practical framework you can begin using. This will be a part of the TCF Learning Initiative, Conviction Fiction Podcast, the e-learn that we're coming out with called Turning Forward, the first one. And this is the SCARS framework, right? Recognizing your scars, right? When you have a scar, the first thing you need to recognize is that you have to study the experience, right? It's a scar. Where did it come from, right? Exactly what happened, okay? Avoid vague language. Just identify the choices, people, situations, and circumstances involved in getting the scar. After that, you want to capture the turning points, right? You want to identify the moments where a different decision could have changed the outcome. If I had did this instead of that, what warnings appeared that I ignored, right? What options did I have, but I didn't really look deeper into those options. And with that scar, you got to articulate the principle. You got to turn the experience into a universal lesson. For example, pride makes temporary conflict more expensive. Pride makes temporary conflict more expensive. And that's a statement that can be used in case someone feels disrespected or they feel they're about to act out over pride, right? Or they feel they're about to do a scam. If they want to, urgency can be used to manipulate judgment. Urgency can be used. If you don't give me your credit card number now, if you don't go and hurry up and make a move, you're going to miss out on this opportunity. Urgency can be used to manipulate or change your judgment, right? So you got to articulate the principle, not just what's going on. There's nothing new under the sun. The technology has changed, but it's all driven by emotion. After that, with your scar, you got to recommend an action. You got to give a person a specific behavior to follow. It's like, if you don't want to get this scar, pause for 24 hours. Call somebody, write down the consequences, leave the environment, right? Don't respond while emotionally activated. And after that, you want to systemize the lesson, right? You want to document it, teach it, create a checklist, maybe build a discussion guide, follow up and evaluate whether that lesson helped. This is how a scar becomes a system. Now, your past does not have to remain a collection of painful memories. It can become a leadership library. Every failure can contain a lesson. Every consequence can reveal a principle. Every scar can become a signpost for somebody walking right behind you. But you have to do more than tell that you survived. You have to show them how. You have to examine the decisions. You have to document the signs. Create the framework. That's mentorship. That's mentorship, not performance, not control. Mentorship is the intentional transfer of tested wisdom. It is reducing unnecessary friction without removing personal responsibility. It is transforming redemption into infrastructure. That's kinetic compassion. So here's the question I want to leave you with today. What lesson did life make you pay for that someone else should not have to purchase at the same price? Again, what lesson did life make you pay for that someone else should not have to purchase at the same price? Maybe it's time to stop hiding that lesson. Maybe it's time to write it down. Maybe it's time to build a program, start a conversation, write a book, teach a class, coach a young person, or help someone in your family make a better decision. Your survival is personal, but its purpose may be generational. Don't spend the rest of your life simply proving that you made it out. Use what you learned to build and exit for somebody else. That is how survival becomes leadership. This has been another episode of the Conviction Fiction Podcast. I'm your host, Antoine Rivers. Here, we do not allow our worst decisions, our longest seasons, or the labels placed on us to become the final draft of our lives. We challenge the fiction. We confront the patterns. We take accountability. And we turn hard-earned lessons into pathways for freedom. Share this episode with a mentor, a coach, a parent, a leader, or anyone whose life experience could help guide the next generation. And remember, your scars are not proof that you are broken. They may be the blueprint somebody else has been waiting for. Until next time, keep leading, keep building, and keep turning your survival into a legacy.